a superwoman of all the stuff that she does. Always exciting news breaking out on her LinkedIn page. She just got an article that she was referenced today. I saw it earlier this morning. And she's also, on top of all of that, the CEO of a magazine that we're going to talk about. So thank you, Judy, for being on our show today. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit of your backstory of up to kind of how we met in Alaska, and we'll go from there.
All right. So my backstory is that I've been a military spouse for over 20 years. My husband retired military, and we've lived all over the United States. We were 10 years Navy, and Pete, my husband, who you flew with, flew F-18s with the Navy, and then transitioned to the Air Force and started flying F-15s, where we met you. So yeah, so we met at the 12th Fighter Squadron, and yeah, and it's been, you know, a wonderful ride throughout these years. And then when we moved to the state of Maryland, I became a professor. The Platform magazine was born almost 10 years ago. Actually 10 years ago to this date, because we'll be celebrating soon. And
all right.
It was yeah. So it was developed with one of my students, one of my former students, who actually does all the covers and all the graphic art and all that fancy stuff that, you know, the artists do to make it look nice and pretty. I just kind of overlook everything.
Right. Well, that's great. We're going to get to the magazine at the end, because I know a lot of people want to hear about that. But I do want to talk about when we met back in Alaska and some of the fun times we had up there. I know Irene and I look back on it as one of our best experience in the military, just because the people we had, the leadership team in place was amazing. We had our fighter squadron, we had 3 female pilots, and it was just amazing, which was kind of uncommon back then, more common now, but this was 2005. And we got to fly all over the state of Alaska and intercept bear bombers, that sort of thing. So that it was really tight knit with the group. And one thing about the spouses, we were the Dirty Dozen for the guys. We were the 12th Fighter Squadron, and that heritage went back to pre-World War II. And then the spouses were the divas. So, and one of the pictures my wife has downstairs is of all the divas dressed in their black dresses, and she just looks back fondly on that time period. But one of the things she always said was it was a big deal with the spouses on whether Judy was going to be able to make it to the event, because you were always so busy. So tell us some of the stuff you were working on up in Alaska.
Well, back in Alaska, I was a professor for the University of Alaska, Anchorage. I was teaching Anatomy 1 and 2 and Gross Anatomy at the time. And I did a section with biology, also basic biology, and tutoring all the athletes. I think everybody remembers the time that I had a field trip and brought the whole hockey team and gymnastics team to the fighter squadron. And then I was supporting through a grant, teaching nursing subjects along with anatomy to retain nurses in nursing programs at the University of Alaska Anchorage. So the University of Alaska Anchorage kept me very busy. And then at the same time, I did some side work in forensics. I worked a little bit with the FBI and the Alaska State Troopers, and did some publications with the state troopers, and some fun stuff in forensics in Alaska that a lot of my students who took my forensics courses heard a lot of stories about. But yes, in Alaska, I was very busy, but you know, during my downtimes, we had some good times with the Dirty Dozen, and you know, kind of.
Sure. Yeah, it was an amazing time. And what's funny though is when you hear Judy tell that story, the translation of that across the squadron is you hear all this stuff, and then you hear FBI, and then pretty soon it just devolves to, well, Judy's FBI, so she'll never be around. Yeah, that sort of thing. It's like she's not actually FBI, but it was.
I just supported them in STEM subjects. That was it. I was not a special agent or anything. I just kind of, you know, educated. It was all about education.
Right. Well, it was fun to talk about. So let's talk about STEM, since you just brought that up. And I know that you're a spokesperson for STEM, and if I have my interpretation right, about to take over as president there locally. So tell us about your initiatives in STEM and what you guys are doing.
So since I've left the Dirty Dozen and the University of Alaska Anchorage, I've been a professor in the state of Maryland. I was a professor for the past 12 years and, did a full 15 years of teaching STEM subjects throughout my career, and then kind of closed that chapter and then moved on into a STEM position in support of the military, which I love, and honored to be appointed in the position that I'm currently in. The last, I would say, 4 years I was invited and appointed to be part of the Washington Academy of Sciences. This past year I held the presidency position, and just been very involved with trying to support STEM in my volunteer work, help students on my off hours as a volunteer, as a mentor, to guide them into finishing their degrees. We see a lot of students struggle through their studies in STEM, especially females. So I was honored the last few years to be appointed as a STEM mentor through Women in Mentoring, and through the college that I worked with, and then with the Washington Academy of Sciences. So with the United States being very competitive in the STEM field, we're really trying to bring back initiatives, incentives, some type of motivational factors to help these American students get degrees in STEM. If it's, aviation, if it's, biology, medical schools, biotechnology is an area that I studied and did a lot of research in. But right now with, COVID going around, we're really needing, we're needing students to finish their degrees in STEM, or, kind of, even if it's a 2-year degree in STEM, we're going to need American students to kind of, maybe take an initiative to maybe study subjects in the area of STEM. We don't get that many Americans to pursue those degrees. And that's where the research that I'm kind of working on. And I've been working on this research for a few years now. So I've currently published a scholarly article with the Washington Academy of Sciences, for strategies to retain students in STEM. So hopefully, and we were talking about me being referenced with another article that was published in the journal this quarter that just came out. So that's exciting, because as a scholar, you always want to be referenced with your work.
Sure. Yeah.
So hopefully next year I'll have another, some more evidence and some more data, and we'll publish the next article. I like to publish once a year. Publishing an article is time consuming, a lot of work. You got to, chip away at what's coming out and being published. So hopefully next year we'll get some more, literature reviews and data to support the next article that'll come out. But in the meantime, we, encourage, parents to maybe, push their kids into STEM, or take them to, now there's these STEM fairs that they host. We have a big one that's hosted by NASA. The Air Force Laboratory brings all their equipment down to DC. So we have this huge STEM fair downtown in DC, and, kind of hopefully get the kids excited and maybe, pursue a job in the STEM field. But we're really needing students to stay in the United States, get a degree in STEM, and then come back and work for the American companies such as Boeing. If you're going to be a DoD contractors, we need those too. We need smart kids. Biotech manufacturing is a big one. We need to fulfill those workforce pipelines. And there's going to be a lot of job opportunities as we bring these jobs back.
Yeah. Well, your words really resonate with me, because as an engineer by degree and pilot and self-professed math nerd, I have unfortunately been unsuccessful in my own household of inspiring my 2 young daughters to enjoy math and science. But maybe someday, right?
Maybe they might change their mind. They're still young.
So I hope so. Well, when you hear of everything Judy's talking about, and writing articles, which is, when she says it takes some time, for those of you that have tried to write professionally, it takes a lot of time. But on top of everything she does between her job and the volunteer work and trying to stay published and be a leader in her field, she's also a professional athlete that's sponsored. So tell us about when did that even start? I can brag, I've been on a running team with Judy. She runs way faster than I do. So just being on the same team was more of the fact that we were just happened to be in the same place. But she's obviously an elite athlete. So tell us how you got started with that and some of the things you've done in the athlete world.
Well, I've been running since 6th grade, and my family's always asking me, my nieces and my nephews are always, how did you get into running? You're the only one that runs in the family. And they give me a hard time about it. But I've been in track and field since, grade 6. And I was always a competitive kid. I was a tomboy, actually. So I never gave up my sport. And I did other sports, in high school. I played baseball. I still did track and field. I think my senior year, I kind of slowed down in track and field because I hurt my knee. And then I thought, once you hurt your knee, back in the day, they used to tell you, well, you'll never run again, right?
Right.
Well, that didn't happen, I just continued to run. I got better and continued to run. And that's actually running's my outlet. But in Alaska is when I got into triathlons. I would say back in 2004. Actually, I think that's when I got my first sponsorship was in Alaska.
Okay.
And I can't remember. It was some community person, how I got involved in that, to be honest. Maybe it was one of my students. It's been so long. But they encouraged me to do a triathlon. It was a sprint. And it was the Golden Nugget. I don't know if you remember that. The Golden Nugget.
I do remember
triathlon.
of it. Right.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And that's when I fell in love with triathlons. And I think I came in like 3rd place in my age group or something. I don't remember. It's been so long. But I said, hey, this is pretty cool. You don't always have to run. You can ride a bike. So started doing sprint triathlons back then. And then, I got like a small sponsorship. And that was kind of motivating for me. I'm like, hey,
Sure. Yeah,
it was just drinks and I like the drinks. And so I was like, I'll run for the drinks. And like I said, but my sporting events is one of those things that releases my stress. So running and being healthy, without having your health, you can't do anything else, right?
Sure.
Your health is your wealth. And we'll talk about wealth later.
Absolutely.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I would say Judy's being very humble. So when she talks about running, a lot of people think I will go for a run to decompress and relieve stress. And you think you might run for half an hour. No, she's running like 6-7 miles. She does half marathons, like not every day, but I mean, you were in a group with a crazy name, right? Some maniacs or something that was doing half marathons almost every weekend. So, I mean, just a lot of running, if you will. So it's very impressive.
So I'm part of the Marathon Maniacs. That was one of my biggest accomplishments when I got to enter the Marathon Maniacs Asylum, whatever they call it.
Right.
And then the Half Fanatics. And then
Fanatics,
if you're the Fanatics. So if you become a member of both, and then you become a double agent because you're running half marathons and marathons. So like I said, my half marathons, I would say maybe go back 11 years. I haven't been doing, as long as my USATF, my sprints. I love sprint racing. But I guess it's all pretty even, but now that I'm getting older, I'm just doing one marathon a year. And
just doing one marathon a year, just one.
And then, so yeah, half marathons, it's one of those, sweet spots in between the half marathon and the sprint. And you kind of get that, half marathon level medal and stuff. But yeah, I really enjoy it. And like I said, I think running is in my blood, in my DNA. And I train pretty much every day. And like I said, it's hard and it's time consuming, but if you train properly, you can't train fast every day, because some people think, oh, you're going to just go run and, run fast and tear up your body. No, I mean, some days are slow. Some days I actually walk, which is even slower. So it takes longer time to train. So, some days I'm walking, some days I'm running. We call fartleks, so you're running fast and slow. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I always feel good after I run, and I'm like, okay, I ran, got that out of the way. I'm ready to go. I'm pumped up. Let's go work. What do we need to get done?
Well, there you go. Well, it's working because of all the stuff that you accomplish all the time. So being so motivated. So that's great. Let's transition. You mentioned health as well, and that's absolutely true. So let's talk about the magazine. Transition into. Tell us kind of the story of what inspired you. When did you kind of first think of starting a magazine? And then did you do it for money? Is it a labor of love? Tell us about the magazine and some of the backstory there.
So the magazine is labor of love. It actually started with my former student, Trish Cross, who does all the covers and a lot of the graphic designs for the magazine. She was my biology student, and
Okay.
and as a professor, she knew I was writing articles for other health issues and other health magazines, and she approached me and said, "Hey, Professor Stavely, I'm really getting into this graphic art design and I can't seem to find an internship. Would you, help me maybe develop a magazine?" And I said, well, let's talk about it. After school, we can sit down, we'll have some coffee and we can, see what your thoughts are. And I said, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. If you can pull it off, and I can, ask around for entrepreneurs, because I knew a lot of entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so I said, we can publish their stories and see how they were successful, and maybe they'll inspire others to be successful. And that's where the platform magazine kind of developed. Its name is, it gave everybody a platform to share their inspiring story.
Right. Well, that's great. And thank you for featuring me in it.
Yeah.
A few years back now, I think maybe 5 years ago, was in the men's edition after I had an airplane accident that could have killed me. Wrote a little article about that, how that changes how you think when you have an experience like that. Let's talk about the money side of it. Was it just the work that it took, or did you have to lay out thousands of dollars up front to be able to get a magazine off the ground? Or
actually, no, because there's so many outlets now. So we're in the digital technology age right now. So we considered, a time where, hey, we need to print this magazine, and maybe, locally, should we get it out there? And we sat down, and then another girl came and she joined the team, and then my daughter joined the team, because my daughter's an artist. And so it was all these females that could do art, and then there's me. But I was kind of the mom. I was the mom looking over my girls that needed to do this for advancing their careers. And they were in school studying, graphic art or art. And fortunately, my girls have done very well, and they now work for big companies, and they do, graphic art designs for these amazing, New York magazines, local restaurants. So they have done very well, and they still work and put together this wonderful magazine that, helped them get where they're at. So like I said, it's a labor of love, but they bring in other girls, and they mentor them also in graphic art or whatever they need, and, scout out stories that might help other people succeed. But the actual magazine itself has sustained itself. And I told, the girls and the team, we have other team members, not just females, but we have, our photographer team that's all over the world, that contributes, to the magazine. And everybody volunteers. It's just, like I said, a labor of love. Everybody uses it to help other people succeed. So I'm not out there looking for money. It's just basically, hey, I help you. You publish a story, it probably helps somebody else out. Chris, he's been one of the fashion editors or pageantry editors since the beginning also. And I think I met him judging a beauty pageant, Miss United States, when the magazine started. And then he started pulling in the fashion girls, because, which I didn't know at the time when we had developed this magazine, is that the girls in pageantry have to have a platform for their stage question. So
Really? Okay.
yeah. So I was like, hey, we could, start publishing their platforms and the community service that they're doing, as a beauty queen into the magazine. So we do that. That's his editorial section, and that's what he does. He publishes their, stories of how they're collecting shoes to help the poor,
Right.
purses, and all this stuff. So everybody has a column now. We have a financial column that Kennedy does. He's been doing it for a very long time. We feature inspiring stories from all over the world. We have met so many people. We have a photographer from India, CK. She's been with us for, I don't know, a few years now. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then like I said, we have San Antonio, Texas, we have Darren, and then we have 2 New York photographers that really do a lot of contributions for the magazine and promote it in New York City and do a lot of stuff to highlight. Right now, they're doing a lot of historical stuff to highlight the COVID and all the lockdowns and all the historical things that are going on with our nation. So
Sure.
that's kind of exciting to document that. And I told them, we should document and educate, because later, as we get older and the new generation comes through, they'll have these stories that they can go back and look at and read of what we experienced through this pandemic.
Right. Well, it sounds like you were the perfect person to be there for these young professionals, to kind of mentor them and bring all of that together to make the magazine happen. And shout out to Darren. I heard Darren's name in there. All my headshots are from Darren. So he came up to Austin to take those. And
he's such a great photographer.
Dudewiththecamera.com. Fantastic, fantastic individual to work with. And it's, all about the people that you work with, for sure. And I know I can hear that in your voice when you talk about your team. We did mention COVID-19, and you're right. We've talked offline that this is a historic time and for all of us. And it does need to be captured, how everybody was affected and things we were thinking about. So if we do face this in the future generations have this to kind of fall back on. But tell me about how it affected you, either personally or through running your magazine. Were you able to continue meeting your timelines for publishing, or did things kind of have to go on hold? Or tell me about some of your challenges.
So we thought right after we went into the national lockdown that we were going to kind of have our May issue maybe lag behind, but the team pulled through. We're kind of running maybe a couple of days behind. We're like, are we going to pull this off? Are we going to be able to, publish this month? And then we had to work with our publishing companies and say, hey, we're going to during the pandemic, we're going to move our original subscription date from the 10th to the 15th. And we're going to keep it at the 15th for now on, just because we're having, struggles with trying to get everything in. And our photographers are, out there trying to get, shots of, the lockdowns but it all came together. I mean, the last few issues have highlighted a lot of different stories of struggles, what people are going through. We had a female in New York City publish her story about, how people are committing suicide and, the sadness of when we went into lockdown and how it mentally affected a lot of the Americans. And, we all have a different perspective on how we were dealing with it. But after reading the stories, you kind of take a step back and say, wow, people are really suffering from this anxiety wise. And I have a different mentality because I'm kind of, was in the middle of working with all of it.
Right.
So my focus is like, are we going to get a vaccine? Are we going to have treatments? And, we have that perspective in our head when you're turn around and then you see somebody that's, in New York City when, during the lockdown and we're having a big crisis, kind of experiencing anxiety, and you kind of say, whoa, people are really hurting out there. We need to really take a step back and help each other out. And so those are some of the stories that we're publishing. And the last 3 months in the magazine, we've highlighted stories from all over the globe. and the lockdown and how things are just quiet. And even in India is really a hot spot right now. So
Right.
CK, who's our photographer editor in India, she's been these last couple of months highlighting India and the struggles that they've been going through. So as Americans, we're watching what each country is doing. Sure. And then we had a couple of articles from Italy also. Italy got, hit hard. So, globally, we're trying to help each other out and trying to cope with this,
right. Well, certainly it's important to get that raw information out there. And, people, if they don't like that because they don't want to see the raw stuff, then they can look away. But it's important that those stories are out there so we can put everything in perspective. Like you said, it's easy to lose perspective of like, oh, I'm so inconvenienced by whatever I have to do locally. Well, people are going through some real struggles out there, and we need to keep that in mind for sure. As far as for somebody that's listening to the show and say, hey, I either want to start a magazine or I want to work my way professionally up through the chain to where I'm a senior leader, a thought leader in my field. What would you advise either those folks that are listening or a younger Judy, either perspective, how you want everyone to answer it? What would you mentor them? What would you say to them as far as how to be as successful as you are?
Well, I think it's personality. I have a lot of intrinsic motivation in me. But then again, it's, having great people, like you said, work with. And I don't do the magazine. Everybody else really does the magazine. They contribute, the stories. Jeff Smith and Barry Morgenstein, who are the photographers in New York City, are out there, taking photographs, documenting stuff. The editors of the magazine are writing their stories every month, getting you, that information that you need to learn how to do finances or, inspire you with health. And like I said, like Trisha does the beautiful covers of the magazines. I don't have that talent. Right. Without her, we wouldn't have a magazine. So we always, are grateful to have her because, she does amazing work in graphic arts. And so, well, I have, if people have a great story to share, please share it with us, platformmagazine.com, and you can email us, the stories that you want to share with others that may inspire somebody, to become an entrepreneur or artist or, scientist. But to run a magazine, like I said, you really have to have a good team that support each other. And I say the most difficult thing of having a magazine is getting the stories every month.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that's what sustains the magazine, because you have to have a minimum of certain pages to publish. And so scouting those stories, and Lori, was my story scouter, and she'd go out there and find the stories or the cover models. She goes out, and spends her time reaching out to individuals saying, hey, your inspiration, would you please share your story with the Platform magazine? And she'd come back and say, hey, we found the celebrity. and so we, those are probably the most challenging aspects to running it. I just see the finished product when it's all nice and pretty and kind of read through it and then proofread it and say, there's something wrong with the grammar, and I go and fix it. But other than that, the hard work comes from the team. And then I, on a weekend, I'll just kind of breeze through it and say, hey, it looks really good, or hey, you need to fix this. Right. But the meat of the magazine comes from, like I said, the team. And we have a pretty good sized team. And we, we work together, we do group chats, we do things virtually, but having the photographers, those are I would say the biggest contributors, because you need those photos. And I always say photos are the ones that really tell the story. Right.
Well, thank you, Judy, so much. And for folks that I know you threw something out there, but folks want to be in contact with you or the magazine, can you throw whatever you want to throw out there for information again, real quick, so how people can get a hold of you?
So you can go to www.theplatformmagazine.com. You can subscribe on Magster internationally, or just buy a single issue. It's digital, so it goes on every digital platform: iPhones, Androids, iPads, your regular laptop. We also go through MagCloud, which you can get a printed copy. You buy a printed copy. It's really nicely printed from them. We quit printing a whole bunch of magazines because, again, most people were buying the magazine digitally. Plus, we're conservative and we like to save paper. So, but some people really like the hard copies because they're really nice.
Right.
So MagCloud took up, doing the publishing for that for us. And they also sell the digital copies where you can download a PDF and print it out yourself. But yes, please do share your stories. Email us whenever, through our website, and or we have our social media sites also, Facebook, Twitter, so Instagram is a big one too.
Right.
So
Well, excellent, Judy. I
yes.
thank you so much for being on today. I know you have a busy schedule, so I will let you get back to doing the thousands of things that are on your to-do list. But to our listeners out there, hopefully you enjoyed Judy's story and you're as motivated by her as I am, because she really does find time to do all kinds of amazing things out there. And hopefully she can help all of you stay on time, on target financially. Thanks again for listening.